All right.
This meeting is being recorded.
You're live.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to our January 10th, 2023 City Council meeting. I'm Val Gilman. I'm the Council President and the Ward 4 City Councilor. In the interest of government transparency with regards to deliberations and decisions made by the City Council and according to open meeting law, since this meeting was posted as a Zoom meeting, this meeting is recorded by video and audio and will be conducted by remote participation. Additionally, all votes taken by the City Council during this and future remote meetings will be by roll call vote. If you're calling in on a phone, you can press *9 to request to speak. If you're watching on a computer or device, there's a raised hand button that you can tap or press to request to speak. Please use either of these options during oral communications to be recognized to speak. I'd like to declare our non-discrimination statement opener. The City of Gloucester believes that there's no individual should be denied equal treatment or opportunity because of their age, ancestry, color, disability, including intellectual and developmental mental disability, family status, immigration status, gender identity or expression, military status, marital status, national origin, race, religion, sex, or sexual orientation. In this vein, we as City Councilors do not condone language that is discriminatory or offensive and will not accept it at our meetings. I'd like to introduce people that are on the calls. We'll start with Scott Memard. He's our Ward 1 City Councilor. And then we have Jeff Worthley, who is an at-large City Councilor, Tony Gross, at-large City Councilor, Jason Grow, at-large City Councilor, Tracy O'Neill, Ward 2 City Councilor, Frank Marjota, Ward 3 City Councilor, Jamie O'Hara, at-large Councilor, and I think that's all 9 of us. And we have some members of city staff that are here tonight. I'd like to introduce Joanne Sinos, who is our city clerk. Thank you, Joanne, for being here. Greg Verger, our mayor, is here. Thank you, Mayor. And then we have Ryan Knowles, our IT director. Welcome, Ryan. We have TJ Shimataro. It looks like it might be Chad, who is on. Is TJ with you? Great, welcome. I'm glad you're here. And then we have Jill Cahill, who's our CAO, Kenny Costa, who is our auditor. And let me see if there's anybody else that is on the next screen. And John Dunn. Did I say John? Our CFO, I think I did. So that is it. Let me tell you how many people we have as participants. Right now we have 34 participants. Okay. So next order of business, Madam Clerk.
First order of business is oral communications.
The public shall have the opportunity at every regularly scheduled meeting to be heard under oral communications on matters not appearing on the agenda. Oral communications shall allow any resident who has a request or complaint of any nature relative to city business to appear before the council, state their problem without debate, and the matter shall be referred to the proper agency through the office of the mayor. The resident will be notified within a 2-week period relative to the disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the city council. Persons speaking, can we have someone put if someone is not on mute, it would be great if you would mute yourself. The resident will be notified within a 2-week period relative to the disposition of same, and a copy shall be forwarded to the city council. Person speaking under oral communications shall be limited to 3 minutes. The council president shall not allow complaints as to individual performance. Anyone on the call as an attendee that would like to speak to our city council for up to 3 minutes for matters not in the agenda. Looks like Patty Amaral, her hand is up. Madam Clerk. Thank you, Patty. Your name and address, please, and welcome.
Patty Amaral, 14 Myrtle Square.
Great.
Okay, great. On October 5th, 2018, our community came together to rededicate 2.7 acres of land to Private Joseph S. Matos Jr., a fallen young Portuguese soldier who sacrificed his life so that we may have the freedoms we have today. His family came from near and far to stand on the land that was dedicated to him. The day was filled with prayers and song and honorable words for his family and from political leaders. Taps and echo were played. You could hear our hearts fill with all that our country had been through in World War I, as if it were just yesterday that our war ended. Fast forward just 10 months, not even a year, and the Light Up Mados committee members were summoned to the then mayor's office to hear the potential taking of Mados Field for the new 440 student school. Jane Sweet and I were the only two members that sat there that day, and when we left that meeting, we were stunned and saddened by the words that were spoken from our then mayor. How could this happen? How could our city believe that taking this young soldier's land be the answer to their problems? We were promised that all that was at Mados Field will be at this new field, wherever it may be. We were told we need to get it in writing, and our then mayor would reach out to the ward councilor. Our then mayor copied the ward councilor on the email, and the ward councilor concurred it should be in writing, and she would make sure it was. Soon after, we found ourselves in litigation, fighting for justice, and the communication was only done through lawyers. We truly thought that we would win as the law was on our side, but the wheels of justice don't always turn in the direction of what is right and true. Legislation was rewritten and rewritten again, and we soon found ourselves falling behind the truth. A simple law called the Robbins test, Robbins versus the DPW, that requires that the land be described accurately in the legislation when it came to vote, was twisted and turned so much it didn't even state the words Article 97 when the vote was made, or no net loss. It stated that it was just city-owned land, so it could have been a parking lot instead of a beautiful dedicated open space. Now, in the year 2023, after most of our past and present leaders have raped the land of all that it once was, the female players of our city have no field, which was promised and legal contracts were voted on. And we have no recourse because it was not written in pen and ink. Title IX of the Educational Amendments was enacted by the Congress in 1972. It states, no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subject to discrimination under any educational program or activity receiving federal financial assistance. We must.
Patty, excuse me, Patty, we've gone about 5 minutes, so could you?
I got 10 seconds. I am sure that many of you perhaps have daughters, granddaughters, and nieces that you want to have equal rights if they grow up to be young women. It is only by your vote, words, and actions that this will happen. Be the city council that did right by the women of our city. Thank you very much. Patty Amaral.
Thank you, Patty.
Thank you.
We also have, I believe we have Marianne Boucher, who's raised her hand.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes, welcome, Marianne. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well. Good Harbor Beach is a jewel in the city.
Marianne, could you, I'm sorry to interrupt. Could you just state your address, please? Thank you.
Marianne Albert Boucher, 93 Mount Pleasant Avenue. Thank you. Sorry about that. Good Harbor Beach is a jewel in the city, a natural asset and an economic engine, like a grand national park, considered one of the top beaches in America. Safety, clean air, and water are fundamental responsibilities of the city and the community. Last July, the city of Gloucester closed the creek portion of Good Harbor Beach due to contamination of enterococci at a level exceeding 144,000 CFU. And the year before, 2021, the number exceeded the 2022 levels. Standard levels, according to mass.gov, is 100 CFU. Information brought forth before the closure indicated that the creek had serious issues at least a year in advance. Now, let me pause here and say it took public pressure, warning signs, and TV media to prompt the $120,000 study for the consultant hired to identify the cause and extreme CFU levels. 2 summer seasons have gone by. Wetlands, salt marsh, wildlife, sea life, and human life are all affected greatly by this contamination. It's certainly not helping with flood mitigation either if it's contaminated water. Contamination that stems from upstream. This all feeds from higher elevation. A full report was going to be presented late in the summer of 2022, which turned into after the next heavy rain. There have been several heavy rainfalls since. The public was notified that there would be a final report in the November 22 meetings. Again, nothing was presented. Here we sit, January 2023, and still no final report. I spoke at the Conservation Commission meeting this past week, asking for them to take action. I'm speaking this evening to all of you to take immediate action on a matter of serious concern. The city of Gloucester paid $120,000 for a consultant to find the problem. Where is it? Where is the full and robust discussion? Why are there no answers? How is this not front page news, not on the agenda, and certainly not on the radar as we speak? Thank you.
Thank you, Mary Ann. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the council for matters not in the agenda for up to 3 minutes? Seeing none, before we transition to the next part of the agenda, I'd just like to announce that Holly Dogwillow is on the call. She's our HR director. Pam Toby is on the call. She's our director of communications and constituent services. And we also have 2 members of past city councilors. We have Council President Steve LeBlanc on the call. He also chairs the Waterways Board, and we also have Paul Lumberg, who's on the call. And I think that I've recognized all the people that, and Suzanne Egan, our corporate counselor, is on the call. So Joanne, can we bring Suzanne in? Because we're going to transition to the next order of business. That would be great. So the next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The next order of business is the consent agenda.
Okay, we're going to do that before the presentation.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. I was concentrating on bringing Suzanne in. I apologize for that. The next order of business is a presentation on private road repair group recommendations.
Great, terrific. And I also want to note that TJ Shimatara, our harbor master, has now joined the call. So, okay, so we have a presentation on private road repair and group recommendations. So I'd like to turn the meeting over to Mayor Verga, because this was his work team. So Mayor, thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. So we all heard a lot about private roads during the last campaign. I'm sure those of you who were on the city council prior to last year heard a lot about it leading up to the campaign. This is an issue that has been a huge issue for many years. We got to the point where we took action. This report was begun with this private road working group, PROG, catchy name, that started meeting, I believe, early summer. And this report was released to you all and to the press several weeks ago. And we finally had the opportunity to present here what the findings were. When I had put the group together, there were several asks. One was, what can and can't we do currently based on state law and city ordinance? What can we change in city ordinance to allow us to do things differently or do more than we currently do on private roads? And what can we do at the state level to allow us to do more? So Bill Helmuth, who is a member of the committee, is going to do a brief slideshow. And if you councilors have questions as we go along, please raise your hand and through the chair, be recognized to get your questions answered. But this is, I don't think there were any smoking guns found in this. There was no magical cure. Spoiler alert, no magical cure here of how we can start paving private roads with public money. But there are steps that can be taken. Council President Gilman, already in today's agenda, I believe you have at least 2 to 3 ordinance changes as a result of the recommendations from this report. Also in this agenda is recommendations from my office to make a change to the free cash distribution to redirect 10%, 5% from a couple categories to an existing revenue account that would be for private road repair. Again, this doesn't address private road directly, but these are steps that put us in the right direction to make things a little more equitable. And again, this is not going to be equitable for everybody 100%, but these are steps that haven't been taken till now, and now they are being taken. So with that, through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to hand it over to Bill to begin the slideshow.
Great. Bill, the floor is yours, and then we'll shortly introduce the other members of the team that are attendees. So thank you, Bill, for being willing to present this to our City Council.
Okay. Well, good evening, and thanks for letting us present our findings on the private road repairs and maintenance on the topic of it. My name's Bill Helmuth. I've worked in Gloucester since 1987. I've been a resident since 2005 and a property owner since 2010, which means in Gloucester lingo, I'm barely a newbie here. I got involved with this after the City Council meeting in 2018 when the pothole issue on my street, Juniper Road, was addressed. And I still remember Mike Hale saying, well, you guys did a fantastic job presenting all the evidence. You have a legitimate argument. The only problem is we legally cannot repair private roads. So he sent us on our way to do some homework. He said, check your deeds and you'll find that it is a private road and you're responsible. And I went, oh. So with my head in hand, I started digging into the researching my deed. And of course, the deed references a deed, which references a deed. When you dig all the way back, it's clearly obvious that as an abutter, I'm responsible for maintaining the street. So much to my chagrin, I'm now involved in trying to move this forward. So we have additional members, which I think you were going to introduce.
Would you go to the next slide?
Yeah, I'm trying to. Everything works right up until it doesn't. There we go.
There you go. Oh, one back.
Nope.
There you go. So we have a couple of residents who are on our team that are in as attendees, and we'd like to bring them in, allow them to introduce themselves and tell us where you live and why you got involved. And then, so we'll start with Karen Bell. Karen, can you get your hand raised so our city clerk can bring you in?
Is she muted?
She's in. Karen, your hand's raised and you should be able to speak. Great.
Okay.
Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. And I appreciate all the incredible effort that the other members of the committee put forth during my several months on the committee. It was a great experience. So I've been a property owner in Gloucester for about 50 years, but for the past 15 years have lived year-round at 27 Briar Road. And I participated beginning about 4 years ago under the leadership of Scott Memhard and other abutters in the Southern Briar Road betterment process. And when working on the committee, I was especially interested in any lessons we could learn from other communities. And I will stop there.
Great. Thank you, Karen. And Jock Bernhoff.
Yeah, this is Jock Bernhoff. I am a resident at 29 Nashua Avenue. I've lived in Gloucester I was born in Gloucester, lived here a large fraction, and have been a property owner here on our own since about 2012. I was part of the paving group that got Nashua Avenue paved, as some on the committee know, and some on the city council know. I think we were one of the first ones to use the new ordinance for the private road paving project. We have 50 abutters on the street. I think it wasn't exactly seamless. Communication was a huge piece of the success, but it was a success. And I'm grateful to be part of this process going forward and hopefully implementing and introducing small changes.
Great. Thank you, Jock. It's been a pleasure working with you. And Karen, both of you have been terrific. And I don't think that Doug Fifield is here. He wasn't feeling well, but I've known Doug for a long time. He lives in Briar Neck, and he was one of the coordinators for the betterment for all of Briar Neck. And he worked closely with Scott Memard. And then we have me, and I think everyone knows who I am. And then Bill Helmuth is the person doing the presentation. Suzanne Egan, we can't thank her enough. Was our leader. She did all the minutes. She did all the notes. She did the lion's share of all the agendas and really led the charge. And we totally appreciated for all her hard work. And Sean Nolan was our alternate. So let's thank Jock and Karen, and Joanne, if you want to bring them back out as attendees, and we'll continue with Bill's presentation.
All righty. So why was the group formed? Well, potholes. And if you've driven around Gloucester, you've probably seen at least several potholes. These were taken right on Apple Street, right around the corner from my house. And these potholes lead to resident frustration, which manifests itself in letters to the editor, complaints to city councilors. It was a topic of discussion at the city council meeting back in 2018. And what you hear is, why won't the city fill my potholes? I pay taxes, and the city plows my street, they should fill the potholes. So those are the responses that you hear. And now these voices have made it to the mayor's office, and he wants it addressed. What is not understood by all private road abutters is that the city of Gloucester is not responsible for permanent repairs to private roads. By Massachusetts general law, a way open and dedicated to the public use, which has not become a public way, shall not be chargeable upon a town as a highway or town way. So the city is not responsible for these kind of repairs. Gloucester ordinance allows spending public money for temporary repairs to private roads. And temporary repairs would be things like filling potholes, and it also snow removal as well. And it's done primarily for public safety. Now, permanent repairs to private roads are the responsibility of the abutting property owner, and they can refer to their deeds to see that. And a road may be open for public use, but still be a private road, owned and maintained by the abutters to the street. That one personally gives me some heartache, but that's my personal problem. Many property owners are surprised to find out that they are responsible, and they just need to refer to their property deed.
Bill, can you just go back to that last one? So I just wanted to mention something on the matter of the plowing. So back in the late 1940s, the city council back then voted to allow for our private roads with statutory public ways to be plowed, with the exception of various types of roads, paper paths, paper roads.
Oh yeah.
Some other, I'm trying to think, like developments that might have been made after that point, with agreement with the permitting authorities that they were not going to need to have their streets plowed. So anyway, I wanted to mention that. And Suzanne, Greg, do you have anything to add to this particular slide? Because this is kind of an important one.
No, I don't have anything to add. The only thing the only thing I would say is that, as Bill said, most property owners that live along private ways are very surprised to find out that it's actually the Mass general law that prohibits the city from spending public money on private ways. Yeah. And so that's what we, as a working group, one of the major things that we were looking at is to make sure that that we confirm that, and that it is an understood concept by people who abut private roads.
Yeah. And when I did my research, I found out that in the state of Massachusetts, this whole concept of statutory private roads goes back to like the 16 and 1700s. So these are not new rules by any stretch.
Greg, do you want to add something, Mayor Verga?
Very quickly, I just want to say about the surprise aspect of it. So I believe I copied you on an email yesterday, Val, to Eileen Duff, who's our member of the Governor's Council, but she's also a realtor and also the president of the North Shore Realtors Association. And I wanted to start the conversation with the association as a former member that it starts with them, because there is a checkbox in MLS when you list a house, condo, whatever, for the ownership of the road. And I think a lot of realtors and real estate agents are automatically clicking public. So I just think it's important that we get the message out to the realtors that, so folks who've been living on these roads for 40 years, I can understand their surprise, but from this day forward, people who are buying houses on private roads should not be surprised. It's up to their buyer agent to make sure that they're fully aware of it. So just sort of throwing that out there as a little tidbit of another effort we're doing for outreach.
Great, thank you. So let's continue. Thank you.
So how does our city fund the paving of our public roads? Well, there's Chapter 90 funds. Chapter 90 is part of the Massachusetts state funding process, but only for public roads, public road repair, and averages we get about $670,000 per year at the city of Gloucester. And this is adequate for a 40-year paving cycle, but public roads need paving about every 20 years. So right off the bat, we're getting half of what we need. And then due to inflation in the construction field, the purchasing power of the city continues to decline. Mike Hale, our DPW director, was quoted in the Eagle Tribune recently saying we only get a fraction of what's needed to bring our public roads to a good standard, above $670,000 a year, which paves a few miles of roadway per year. And like most communities, our needs are greater than our resources. So this is not a unique to Gloucester situation, but it's Gloucester. We need to address it here in Gloucester. So
thank you.
The private road working group established by Mayor Verga is charged with reviewing and recommending changes to the City of Gloucester Code of Ordinance regarding repairs to statutory and dedicated private roads as authorized by MGL. Potential special legislation that will assist the city and residents in making those repairs, ways to increase state funding for road repairs, and best practices for the use of public funds for private road repairs and public acceptance of private roads. As a group, we held 11 meetings. The mayor, the director of Public Works, and the city treasurer attended some of the meetings to provide their input. But we wanted to be sure as a group that the primary affected departments had their input. The group reviewed existing information about the city's roads, relevant state laws and regulations regarding improvements to public roads, use of public funding, and the extent of the problem in other municipalities in Massachusetts and New England. And it is an issue for a lot of municipalities in Massachusetts. And no one that I have been able to find so far has managed to get around this issue. We created a database of all the identified roads in the city's street inventory. And then we added some new data for the purpose of analysis. And I'll show you some examples of the data sheets we generated. And we reviewed these findings, evaluated alternative solutions and recommendations pertinent to the mayor's charge, and discussed additional ways to inform the public about private road repair and maintenance.
And I just want to add two quick things with the first bullet. Mike Hale has done two very thorough, informative presentations at our city council meeting. One was back in 2018, and then there was one recently, I believe it was in March of this past year, 2022. And both of the minutes of those two meetings are on our website on the Public Works Department under private road repair, if you ever want to take a look. But Mike is extraordinarily knowledgeable on this. He's also going to be a panelist for an MMA conference on the 20th of January for those of us who are going to be attending. It's at 3:30 on a Friday afternoon, and I look forward to sitting in on that. And also John Dunn, who is our CFO and our treasurer, he was good enough to come to one of our meetings and spoke at length about the whole betterment process. And the betterment process is something that Sean Nolan, our vice chair, and also Ward 5 City Council developed about four years ago. And it's been very well received in the community. And John has some suggested changes he'd like to see the council consider, and he'll be crafting some of those changes and redlining our council order on our ordinance on that. And we look forward to putting that in the cycle for review on the city council. So both Mike and John have been really helpful to bring us along and describe all their interactions with this process. So thank you.
Okay. So some city street statistics, and we should pay attention to this. City of Gloucester has 167 miles of streets. Of that, 88 are considered municipal, and those are covered by Chapter 90 funding. 63 miles are private roads, and then 14.8 are MassDOT roads. So per the Chapter 90 apportionment formula, local road mileage accounts for 58% of the weight of how that funding is apportioned. The rest is between population and employment. I found it interesting that employment figures are provided, ironically, by the Mass Department of Unemployment Assistance. But I think we want to focus on the municipal roads. If we take the municipal and the MassDOT, add them together, we come up to about 61.8%. So those are already funded by public money. That leaves about 40% of the city roads that are private roads. Of the 40%, 25 are considered statutory or dedicated private roads, which means they're open to public access. And then the remaining 15% are truly public. There's no public access without permission from the owner. And in both cases of private roads, the abutters are responsible for maintenance and repairs. Now, if we try to convert some of these roads, private roads, to public, it puts us into a quandary because we barely have enough money to handle public roads now. If we add more mileage, the mileage factor doesn't give us enough money to actually do anything about it. So we're actually digging a bigger hole by converting over to private roads into public roads as currently set up. And
just to add a perspective here. So when we did recently National Ave and Squamish Road and Annisquam as betterments, each of those roads costs approximately $250,000 just in paving one road. I believe Reynard Street was, if I'm not mistaken, was somewhere around that same amount of money. And we had additional money that was given to a safe walking grant, which was all the sidewalks. But so when you take a look at that and you think about how small those roads are, they are each taking up about a third of 1 year.
Oh yeah, that's like 40%.
Chapter 90, right? And that's how little these roads really cover. And that's what the conundrum is for us in terms of, how do we best move forward in being able to handle our paving of our public roads? And then how do we start to bring more privates to public for roads that are frequently used when we just don't even have enough money? As Mike Hale said earlier, we have enough money to pave our public roads every 40 years when they really need to be done every 20 years. Mm-hmm. So anyway, we could belabor this for a long time. So let's continue.
Yeah, that's good. Good examples. Okay. So the group decided to focus on 3 priorities: public education, about public and private road repairs, including the public safety aspect, amending the Code of Ordinances, Gloucester City Code of Ordinances, to simplify and clarify the private road repair process and how to convert to a public way, and advocate for more funding for public road repairs. We can shuffle the funds around that we have to favor the paving of the roads, but the funding is still inadequate. So Chapter 90 funding assumes a 40-year life cycle. According to Mike Hale, this life cycle is more like 20 years. So in reality, we start out with half the funding we need, and that's just for public roads only. So we're starting off in a hole here. So education helps residents make informed decisions about repairing private roads. And the private road owners need the tools to determine how and when private roads may be temporarily repaired. And the website this is the website that that Val had referenced, and it's currently a link that you can access from the Public Works Department website. And it has all the links to the ordinances, the lists of public and private roads, past minutes to council meetings, when Public Works presented this topic, and historical information on the topic. And this link, the information on this link was developed by Councilors Nolan, Gilman, and Memmer, with assistance from Grace Poirier, the Assistant City Clerk, and reviewed by the Public Works Director and his administrator, Rose LaPiccolo. And our group wishes, if we are allowed to work forward, to expand the tutorial with additional educational information. So again, the owners need to understand how and when permanent repairs can be made, and how and under what circumstances a private road may be converted to a public road, and that should expedite the process of repairing private roads. Comments? Move on.
Mayor, Suzanne?
No, I'm here to help out with any questions that.
Okay, I was just pausing to let anybody jump in if they needed to. Okay. So final recommendations. So we mentioned 3 topics. So public education and outreach about private roads. Maintenance is important. So provide the educational materials, including an explanation of why some roads are public and some are private, a guide for determining whether a road is public or private. This still remains a bit of a mystery to me. A tool for weighing repair options and estimating the cost of maintaining and repairing private roads. And then resources and information about establishing homeowners associations to organize the maintenance and repair of private roads. And those would be like neighborhood homeowner associations. So we're kind of assuming or hoping that once most people know that they are responsible, that they're more apt to handle the repairs properly. So we need to distribute these materials. So we plan to, the plan was to publish a webinar on the city's website explaining that the city has no obligations. Private road owners are obliged to maintain and repair their roads, and the process for seeking city assistance to perform the repairs with private funds and the legal restrictions. That would be the betterment process. Read a frequently asked questions sheet on the city's website. Include the educational materials with the tax bill or the water bills, something that everybody receives. Distribute materials to realtor groups, homeowner associations, land use permitting boards and committees, and other various groups. And we feel that's important. So that important. Oh, because it puts the issue up front to the owner when they're purchasing the property. And then draft and publish materials in the local newspapers. Other methods of communication: work with the MMA to run a seminar at its annual meeting to cover the topic of private road repair options and state funding. Collaborate with state legislators to seek more funding for public road repairs. Publish on the city website past private road repair projects. What is the timeline and cost of the project, and the contact information for individuals willing to discuss their private road repair experience. there's nothing like talking to someone that's already been through the process to help quell some fears. And then publish a tutorial about the city's MapGeo mapping tool. It helps landowners find information about their public roads, private roads.
Can I just pause for a second? I'd just like to comment on the third bullet. No, I'm sorry, the second bullet, which was collaborate with state legislators to seek more funding. I actually talked to Mayor Verger about this yesterday. The possibility of us coming up with a resolution that we might want to send to our new governor, because she is adamant that we need to improve our infrastructure. We thought that that might be helpful. So shortly after we listened to Mike Hale's presentation at the MMA meeting and hear how that goes over statewide, because it will be 371 different municipalities that will be at that conference. I'm sure there'll be a good crowd. Yeah, so I think that that's something, councilors, we might want to think about, maybe a joint resolution with the mayor's office, and we can work on that later on in January. So just planting a seed that we think that there's momentum and we really want to push harder. We need more than $680,000 for our public roads for repair. Mayor, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that, one of the two takeaways from this, one is, I've been seeing on social media, people saying we should just take all the roads public, but as you see, would just exacerbate the problem. If we all of a sudden had all these public roads, we wouldn't get the dollars to cover them. And it would just mean we're spreading around the small amount of money we have to more roads. And, it is a big problem that we share with a lot of other communities. And I think working with our friends in the other communities, the legislators, we might be able to get somewhere with it. But as I said, there was no magic bullet in this, the research that was done. But there are some steps we can take to try to ease the pain going forward for our residents.
Yeah. And I just want to note that additional funding for public roads would also help the city to convert more private roads to public without compromising the ability to maintain all the public roads. So even though it sounds like we're advocating for more public money, that actually indirectly helps the private road situation. And
right.
My feeling was a simple way to increase the funding would be to challenge that 40-year life cycle of a road. So if it got changed to 20 years, that would double our funding right there. And it's a more realistic expectation.
Right. And Mike feels pretty comfortable with that would be helpful.
Yeah. So there's lots of ways that we can try to manipulate, work with the system. So simplify and clarify. So amend Article 4, Chapter 21 of the Code. So Section 21A, we would clarify that the city cannot make permanent repairs to private roads. And that's consistent with MGL. Section 2182, require that when making temporary repairs to a private road, the city shall notify the abutters that if the road is unsafe due to the overall condition of the road, the abutters shall, within a year, provide the city with a plan to make permanent improvements to the road. We can't continue to just put potholes, just cover them up with asphalt that lasts, several months. So temporary repairs do not make necessarily a safe road over the long term. So if the plan is submitted, the city will continue to make temporary repairs for a calendar year until permanent repairs are made. And prioritize temporary repairs for private roads, which are connector streets or lead to a public area or place of interest.
So let me just reflect on that just for a second. So you're going to see a slide shortly that discusses some of the roads that are connector roads or roads leading to a place of interest. But for example, I think we all know that streets like Beach Road and Brightside Ave, Shore Road is between two public roads and it happens to be private in between the two. And then you've got Apple Street that goes to Corliss Landing, which is a major landing in Gloucester.
I was going to cover that on that slide.
Yeah, exactly. But the issue here is if we have a minimal amount of money to address temporary repairs for private roads, the roads that have the most amount of traffic on them are the ones that we'd like to prioritize. Because like I said, if we don't even have enough money for public, and we're not supposed to be using private funds, using public funds or private roads for using public funds, that definitely is a conundrum. So anyway, thank you. Next slide.
Okay. And going back to this, make a plan for determining if a road is unsafe. We need to also have a fair and equitable method of evaluating road status, and that needs to be clarified. And the same for the prioritizing of repairs. I think Mike told me that he does have that such tool, but I haven't seen it, so that it doesn't become a debate. Amend the code of ordinances to clarify the betterment process. So section 2183 will simplify the petitioning process for the city to make improvements on private roads, funded through the betterment process. We want to try and give the abutters every opportunity to make this an easy process to both follow and follow through on. And 2184, clarify how abutters are identified for the purpose of initiating the process. The quantum of vote required from abutters, the number of abutting lot owners, and the timing. We want to direct that the notice of the vote and of the potential betterment assessment be recorded at the Registry of Deeds, so it becomes an official legal document.
Okay.
No, I was just catching up myself here. Okay, I looked this up, and this could be codify or codify. So codify chapter 21, article 2, section 12.1, and these would be prerequisites to acceptance of private roads to public roads. And as Val mentioned, our working group concluded that heavily traveled private roads would be good candidates for conversion if they met these criteria and had abutter support. So they need to be a connection road to a public property or recreational area. It should be a connected road between two or it could be a connected road between two public roads, or a connected road to a private attraction, like Bass Rocks Golf Club and the Backshore Hotels. The fastest and most effective thoroughfare for public safety vehicles to access other streets. They are going to take the shortest route possible, and if that means going over private or statutory private roads, they're going to do it. And they should be in good. They should be in good shape. They should be in good, safe shape, so that we're not putting the public safety vehicles in jeopardy of damage. And a bonus to Mike, the DPW, would be that the road already has a need for repair of public utilities. So rather than doing the job twice, that would help to prioritize. So this was a sample analysis sheet for prioritizing. So I retired from Gloucester Engineering, so I was allowed time to chase rabbit holes. So we started looking at some of these, some of the things that would help us sort through the data a little better. Like we had a number of abutters, the ward number, the length of the road where I could get the data, and then public area access. And this is just 8 out of a list of about 27 that could be prioritized according to these criteria. And then there's notes. So if we look at, I think Val mentioned Apple Street, the one on top. It says that it goes to dead end. When I was doing the sorting, I kind of threw all the dead end streets out because I'm like, well, the public's not passing through there. So, but some of them actually do end at a public site, such as the Corliss Landing. So I made some notes, and that the lot actually has a city kayak rack. So we're promoting a lot of travel into the Corliss Landing to rightfully use, a nice public access area. But I did a little more research, and the state of Massachusetts is actually responsible for the maintenance at the landing.
for the Public Access Board. So actually between Juniper Road all the way out to the launch, that all should be maintained by the state of Massachusetts. And then if we look at Barn Lane, that's definitely a major connector between Thatcher Road and Eastern Ave. I think Val mentioned Beach Road and Brightside. Both of those have, they provide access from Bass Ave to the back shore, which are a lot of hotels and such. And then Bass Rocks Golf Club is also in a butter and a destination. And then Dogtown Road, that's a private road owned by pretty much the city of Gloucester. There's 11 abutters, but I think all but 4 are the city of Gloucester. And that's the city compost site. So it's a destination that a lot of the city has to have. So that street tends to get overburdened by public traffic because there's a need to be up there. And then even Babson Road, right? That's access to the middle school, ball fields, and that's primarily abutted by the city of Gloucester. Yet it's a private road, primarily owned by the city of Gloucester. So there's things here that don't make sense to me, and and they should be considered as part of the prioritizing. And this is all up for debate. It's all up for challenge.
Right.
It's an example of one way that we could put these things together. And I did.
Yeah. So, councilors, we're almost ready to we're almost ready here to wrap up. So let's just let's continue this, and then we'll be able to ask questions. I do want to mention on this process of conversion, however, that it requires 100% in support for folks that live on a private road before we can even get to the possibility of consideration to move that road to a public. And that's always that challenge. So you need to have 100% of the abutters interested. So anyway, so let's continue. This is really good information.
These are all issues that should be addressed with the group in the forward action.
Yeah, so, and I'd love on this funding section, it would be great to hear a little bit more from the mayor on this. But why don't you lead us through the slide, and then we'll let Greg speak a little bit to this.
Yeah, I was going to mention that the first 2 bullet points, our group generated the first one there that we would wanted to decrease. We wanted to decrease from 40 to 35% capital expenses and favor those for road paving. But as it turns out, Mayor Verga has added the first 2 bullet points to tonight's consent agenda for referral to BNF consideration. And if you look at enclosure 6 of the January 10, 2023 packet that was sent out, it addresses these first 2 bullet points. So other exploration, create a plan for prioritizing and queuing the roads that will be accepted as a public road. And that was kind of an example of the spreadsheet. And the city should advocate for the state legislature to receive a recalculated share of general law chapter 90 money. Work with state legislators to find ways for the city to obtain more state funding for permanent repairs to a potentially growing number of public roads.
Mayor, would you elaborate a little bit, and also how you've used some ARPA funds this year to help us with that?
Yeah, so first of all, on the free cash formula, this year it's in your agenda, the 4.3 million and some change. The recommendation from the group here was to reduce that first category from 40 to 35, which we did. And then I'm trying to remember what that other category is. We reduced from 30 to 25. So it's a total of 10% for this already existing revenue account that John Dunn recommended we use for this purpose. As you all recall, because you all voted for the $300,000 in fiscal 22 that supplemented last year's road repair. And then we, as we all know, upped in this current fiscal year budget, the road repair line item from 60 to 350,000, which is about a 480% increase. And then on top of that, $3 million from ARPA. But as I said in, I don't know if it was an email to you folks or to somebody else, a citizen, that $3 million was a one-time deal. So we did get a lot of road work done. last year, calendar year. We've got a lot on tap for the rest of the fiscal year through July 1. But that's in part to the $3 million bonus that we plugged in. So next year we won't be able to get to as many roads as we'd like to. But by creating this new this new item, the 10% from the free cash going forward, it gives Mike a little more of a cushion to work with as needs arise.
Thank you.
Yeah. In my personal opinion, as we become more and more of a tourist destination, we should have good roads.
I think we all agree.
So the group recommends prioritizing public education, amending the code of ordinances to simplify and clarify the private road repair process, and to advocate for more local, state, and federal funding for public road repairs. So what's next? With the mayor's authority and approval, members of the group have volunteered to stay on for the follow-up actions that were recommended by the group. So they're all good ideas. They're only ideas until we put them into action. Further coordinate with the DPW to define road safety criteria and how to best prioritize roads to be repaired. Consult with the police and fire departments to determine what roads are used as expeditious routes for the purpose of prioritizing the private roads for public way conversion, and encourage all abutters to private roads to research their properties as their responsibility for road maintenance, so the follow-up actions can be applied equitably. And
Great. So I think we can take down the presentation, and like to open this up for any questions from city councilors. Thank you so much, Bill. That was really very informative.
you're welcome. That was totally a group effort. Totally a group effort.
Thank you. I first saw Tony Gross, and I know he's been involved as a member of the Nashua Ave group on a betterment. So you've had long-term experience on this. So questions, start with Councilor Gross.
Yeah, I only have a couple. Thanks. Bill, it went right by. What was the true private road that, the private public entry is limited? What was that percentage on those? It wasn't in the slide.
Say that again. I missed.
The true private roads that don't allow, you have to have permission to enter the road.
Oh, that of the 40% of private roads, 15% of them are actually true private roads.
Okay.
And you can usually identify them because at the end of the road, it has like 19 mailboxes, and on trash day, it has a whole bunch of trash and recycle because public utilities can't go up there.
Yeah, and on the Apple Street site, not only do you have the launch ramp, but you also have a playground that takes up a whole lot of that site too. So that
almost half of, right. So the city
that may want to be mentioned in there. And then I don't think it's not a true dead end. It does at the bottom there, it does turn. So
Apple Street.
Yeah.
Well, it ends at the landing.
Well, yeah, but it turns off to another street. It has an outlet.
Well, yes, correct. But
it's
what
not a true
what
dead
I started
end.
with was the city generated list of roads, and it's
Right.
listed as a dead end road.
Yeah, no, but I think the playground should be recognized in that slide too. That's
Oh,
it.
absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you for your work.
The playground, the lake. Yeah. Okay. Good point.
Councilor Grow.
I'm going to throw in a couple of quick ones here. There's one thing that I saw on the slide that I didn't understand, which was what is a potential 50-50 candidate? Is the 100% agreement statutory, or is that just something that has been decided for in terms of whether or not, if you have 90%, is that not going to get your road done? And is that a matter of statutory regulation or state regulation? And then the final question I was going to toss out there is that, we spend a lot of time with special projects determining the construction of roads and making sure that the roads are built properly. Why aren't we taking those roads public when they're finished? Because they're being built to a standard supposedly at the level that state's requiring. You're getting 20 some odd years on these roads before they really need repairs. And it can add to our public road tally without incurring the same kind of level of expense that a renovated private road might do. We did that with Schoolhouse Road, and we did that with Gloucester Crossing Road when those projects were done. I'm just
Right.
wondering if we're missing an opportunity to bring in a few miles here and there on projects with multi-houses that are building proper roads that we could then add to the mileage. Anyway, I'll leave that there. I might have some other questions, but I just wanted to throw
No,
those out.
that's a good point. These are some of the things that we wanted to address in the follow-up, in the ongoing pursuance of this.
And Jason, the question about 50/50,
Yeah,
the 100%, that's to take the road public only. I mean, if
right. Is that a statutory thing, or is that just something we've decided that everybody has to be on board?
I'll have Suzanne chime in, but I
That was
believe it's
something, that
statute.
was something I dug up in the archives. It was done
Yeah.
several years
Suzanne-
back where
It's
I can
private
address that.
property, so, but Suzanne.
And King James.
So I
Suzanne,
can
you
address
have
that
the
issue.
floor
Yes.
with
so-
all these strong opinions. Go ahead.
One of the things that becomes critical when you're going to accept a private road as a public way, it's the city council or the city through the city council is laying out a public way, which a part of that means you're exercising your eminent domain rights, right? Because you're taking private property for a public purpose. And in that, there is a value. So anybody whose private property is taken is also entitled to just compensation. But so if you don't have 100% of the private property owners in agreement, you could subject yourself to liability, the city to liability with regard to taking of the private property for the public road. So that's why I would recommend, just to reduce any risk of liability to the city, to make sure that all of the private property owners are 100% behind that and provide some release of liability for the city.
Thank you, Suzanne. Any other questions, counselors? Council Worthley.
Yes, first and foremost, thank you to all of the volunteers who work this private road working group committee. I'm not sure I got the name right, but thank you, Mayor Verga, for organizing this, Councilor Gilman, Councilor Nolan. I think everyone here in our group realizes how important the volunteers are that are doing this, and it's not easy. That's the first point. The second one is, it seemed to me that the goal, as the mayor said, was what can we do? I think that means what can we do with public money versus what we can't do with public money. Is that what, right? Okay. Then what can we change locally? Was that what can we change locally to make it easier to use public money, or what can we change locally to help people on private roads fix their own roads? I wasn't clear on that objective.
Can I answer that now? I'll
Sure,
answer as we
go
go
ahead.
along. Yeah. I think both, Jeff. What can we do to make it easier for them, and what can we do by tweaking our ordinances to allow us to spend more money? I think the moral of the story after the research is there's not a lot we can do other than temporary repairs with public money.
Okay, and then I think you said, what can we do at the state level? And that really means what can we do at the state level to advocate for more money for public roads, not what can we do at the state level to advocate for private roads. I just want to make sure I got that clear.
I think advocate for whatever we can do to make it easier for both, whatever, go through Bruce, Senator and Rep Ferrante. And because as Bill pointed out, in the sheer fact that DPW Director Hale is doing a presentation at MMA, this is not a Gloucester issue. So I would assume there are other state reps and state senators out there who are hearing the same thing from mayors, town administrators, and councils and select boards. So I think we have an opportunity. And I don't know if I don't know the answer, but I doubt that anybody's gone to the level that we have to come up with, say, evidence that there's a problem.
Oh, I think you've done an exceptional job identifying the problem. I think the solutions still evade us for a while, at least. But I appreciate you also added the phrase, what can we do to be a little more equitable? I think for all of us, I can say me specifically too, when something's not fair, fair isn't always equal, but equitable is pretty clear. People who live in private roads do pay the same taxes as people who live on public roads. And I wonder, are there any other cases where the state tells us we can't provide a service to people based on the street they live on? That seems just fundamentally, We couldn't say to someone who lives on a private road, well, your student can't come to our schools. We wouldn't say to someone living on a private road, oh, the police can't come when you call for a domestic violence situation. Police can't come to enforce a law. So it really feels, I don't want to use the word angry, but there's another word, righteous indignation. So what's fair? The people who live on private roads really don't have much advantage. Yes, they can use the middle of the road as a boundary for their property on some zoning changes. I don't think that actually helps them. Or zoning relief, I don't think it helps them as much as we think it does. But I want to go back to something that Attorney Egan said. The idea that you need 100 people on the road to accept or to agree to have the road be taken public to avoid liability, which I respect. But then the question is the liability we have for maybe public safety doesn't get there as quickly because the condition of the road, or someone walking on a somewhat sidewalk, somewhat, edge of a road and getting hurt.
I can
There's
answer that
liability.
question if you'd like me to, if you'd like me to answer that question regarding the
Please.
liability. So if somebody is injured on private property, there's no liability to the city. And also city is only liable for specific, under the statute, there's specific immunities. And one of them is whether or not the public safety gets to somebody's house in time. There's no guarantee, right? That public safety is going to be able to get to anybody in an emergency at any time. And there's certainly no liability for the city. So the legal principle here is that public funds can't be used for private purposes. And when we talk about being able to make repairs to private roads, is that public funds are being made or being expended, taxpayers' dollars are going to improve private property. And that's the prohibition.
And Jeff, I think what you were starting to say is, it seemed like what you're saying is we take it and then we fix it. But I think it'd be the other way around. You fix it and then we'll take it. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think any of us would recommend just going around taking roads that are in various levels of, from bad to awesome, so the first step would be, and when I was on the council, that was kind of what was envisioned when we first started doing the betterments, that we'd ultimately take the roads after they were repaired. So I don't think any of us would support just grabbing roads until the residents have done it, because it is private property. And one of the analogies I've been using to try to explain why we can't do this is we can't go into somebody's backyard and start planting a tree, you know what I mean? Or because it's their property. So we can't just go down a private road and start digging up the road, because technically, per the deed, they own the road. So that's why we're trying to square the circle here and trying to find just things that have been overlooked for decades and see where we can make a little bit of progress on it.
If I may continue, and I don't have too much here more. So I like that analogy. We can't just go plant a tree in someone's yard, but we also can't just walk in someone's yard or drive down their driveway. We are statutorily obligated to allow cars to pass on these roads. So it's a little bit, I like the analogy, but it doesn't quite answer the question that the public can use this private property. And I think Apple Street's a perfect example. Osmond Babson Road, there's 1,200 cars per day that go on Osmond Babson Road. Those are not only people who live on public roads that are driving on that road. And I think the question simply to me is, if private property owners are paying the same tax rate as public property owners, and I understand that they own the road, but why, if we're letting people drive on those roads, would they not have the same level of service? Because to me, that sounds like discrimination. And I raise the question, what's the penalty? If we were to, we're not talking about going on someone's private road property that they don't allow the public on. If we were to say we want to pave Apple Street, for example, what's the penalty if we use taxpayers' money, which includes taxpayers from Apple Street? What would be the penalty if we did that?
I can respond to that question.
Go ahead, Suzanne.
Or not. Right. So first of all, it would be against the law. So when you
state law, just to clarify,
which particular law?
Mass General, not state law, not Local.
State law, yes, yes. It's the anti-aid amendment, right? So public funds can only be used for specific purposes allowed under the law. The city would be subject to a 10 taxpayer lawsuit that would prohibit, that would, go to seek an injunction against the city from spending that money. We always, regardless of whether there's the consequences are that you're in violation of the law and that you could have a judgment against you. So that, and we try, right, in our best efforts and to always abide by the law. So that's why we're looking at this sort of globally and saying, we know that this is the case. It's a big part of what the working group did, was try to get to that understanding, because I think a lot of members of the working group came to it saying, why can't we spend public money on these private roads? Everybody's using these private roads. Why can't we do it? And we did enough research so that the conclusion was that people were accepting the fact that you cannot use the public funds on private roads. And that's a critical piece of what our recommendations are, is to do that education to members of the public so that they also understand that it's not necessarily something that the city is choosing to do. It's not unfair. It's just the law because it is private property. So I think what you're saying here really drives the point home of what our conclusion is. Like, education is critically important in this instance, so that people do understand it and they understand what they can do to either, use the betterment process to have their roads repaired, or take action on their own to make the repairs to their own private property.
Right. My question
Okay,
wasn't.
so all right, one more comment, Council Worthley, then we're going to share the floor. Go ahead.
I certainly was not intending that my comment was not designed to reinforce that we need to educate people that they don't have the right to at least feel that this is unfair. In the history of the United States and our country, our state is rife with things that were discriminatory until they weren't. And so I really think that we should take the step with our state rep and state senator to really push to change state law so we can use taxpayers' money for roads that taxpayers drive on. And not every road is created equally, right? So some roads get a lot of traffic and need to be repaired every 20 years. Not every road is the same way, though. There are some roads that might take 30 or 40 years before they need to be repaired. I thank the group for the work and the mayor for making this a priority, but it still seems like solutions are evading us. And I would like to see if we could somehow really push to say, could we create a private road fund, for example, that maybe a percentage of an application fee or someone contributes to it in exchange for, like we did with the Halyard property, I think $1 million went to the Affordable Housing Trust. Could we create a private road maintenance fund that's legally allowed to have money go into it that we can use for this purpose? That'd be a question I'd like to have answered.
So Councilor, not with the under the jurisdiction of the current Mass General Law. That's the conundrum here. So let's share the floor with Councilor Grow, and then we'll see who else hasn't spoken. Go ahead, Jason. Jason, you're muted. Sorry.
Sorry. Trying to hurry here. One, I didn't get an answer on the 50-50 contender or candidate statement in the thing. And I'm assuming that means that there's something afoot for some sort of sharing of particular road repairs. Is that?
I'm not sure what.
Yeah, that's the way I understood it. I was looking back into it, and it was a 50-50 proposition where the city paid for half and the state paid for half. But it was
not likely to happen.
Yeah, when we were originally doing this way back in the old days when I was on the council, it was 50-50, and then that went away because.
So that's not relevant any longer, though. Okay. Secondly, Suzanne, can you answer very quickly? Do people pay taxes on their roads? I read something in a story recently, and looking back at this issue, that stated that even though they are considered private roads and part of your private property, you're not actually taxed on the amount of road that abuts your property. Is that correct?
I can address that from my own deed.
Okay.
And the way I understand it is I pay taxes on up to my property line. My property line extends as an attachment to the center line of the road. It is specifically for creating an easement for people along my road to get to their house by crossing my property.
And I can,
So and the easement is actually the hot top, but it's also that property, I can't do anything to it. You can't develop it, you can't obstruct it, you can't do anything other than repair it.
Right.
That's where
and
I
I
think
can address that more generally. So if there are some private ways that are separate lots, and so those would be assessed. And there are some private roads that have are laid out as ways and have multiple property interests. And as Bill was just saying, have certain lot lines and are not necessarily assessed separately, but that would be more of a question for the assessor's office if there's some added value in some instances, if it's a gated community and it's a private road that may seem, that may add value to a property. I don't know how that is assessed, but that would be more of a question for them.
The final thing I'd like to say very quickly is that I think we've got to be very careful about firing people up about the inequity of paying taxes. There are plenty of people in this community that don't send their kids to to public schools. There are plenty of people who've never called the fire department. There's plenty of people who don't go to Rose Baker Senior Center. We spend money, public money, on public services that people can avail themselves of in general. And there are certain circumstances that prevent people from availing themselves of those projects or those programs, but that doesn't make it inequitable. It just means that that's not going to go their particular way. So I just want to be careful about that because it does get people fired up about it. I understand. I live on a private road. I get it. I feel complete sympathy for people who live on private roads and have this issue arising, but let's keep it in perspective here, I think is really important.
So, Councilor Gross, you have your hand raised.
Yeah.
And then Councilor O'Hara.
On this road where we had it use the betterment, I pay taxes up to the edge of the road. My square footage on my lot ends at the pavement. So I do not pay taxes on the road on Nashua Avenue. And I've had it professionally surveyed because we bought a piece of a lot next door. And what I pay for is the square footage on my survey that ends at the pavement. So I do not pay taxes on the road itself, that piece of property, in my instance. Also, I'd like to ask Suzanne, where my road's like a dead end, so it would be something that probably could happen, but can any private road limit public access?
I never like to
residents.
So I never like to answer completely general questions, right? Because there's always circumstances that may vary the answer, but in instances where so if you have a private road where every single person who has an interest in that private road agrees to limit the access, then they can.
Okay, yeah.
Right.
I thought that might be the case because obviously it's common in many areas of our city where that exactly happens. So the abutters, just because they don't have to, if they all disagree that the public should be allowed to use it, then now I don't know if there's a public facility at the end of the road, that's a different thing, or when it's a through road, those are two separate issues there, which like you said, you hate to answer it generally. But I think that in general, that would be the case. And from your answer, I guess you agree.
Yes. And so in an instance, if there's a private road that connects to another private road, then in all likelihood, if it was one of those developments, then those people would also have an interest in the road. So it gets complicated, right? When you have a private road, how many people have an interest in the road and how many people you have to have agree to take action with regard to that road. And if the city had wasn't a butter to a private road and there was a request to close it down, then the city as an owner and a butter would also have to agree. So
yeah. So it is a possibility though. That's all. I just wanted.
It is a possibility.
I just want to make sure that it wasn't, statutorily prohibited, and which was kind of what it was alluded to earlier. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Councilor. Councilor O'Hara had his hand raised.
Thank you. These private roads for public use didn't become or some of the roads didn't become impassable overnight. It took a lot of time. And these owners, Council Gilman, Council Nolan, myself, Council Memhard, have been on the council. This is our 8th year. It's been 8 years that we've continued to talk about this. These private roads for public use continue to not get any kind of attention for the most part. And as has been discussed, as you know, there's nothing that precludes the city from doing maintenance on those roads. Again, I have to stress, they did not become impassable overnight. So we, as Councilor Worthley has stated, these homeowners pay taxes. They pay the same tax rate as people who live on public roads, public ways, but yet they do not receive any city service. So merely putting aside repaving, just the city doing maintenance would be fair, but we do not do the maintenance. The constituents contact me time and time and time again. I've contacted the DPW. They tell me they can't touch the private road. So I have to stress what Councilor Worthley is saying as far as fairness, being equitable. Our city is not answering that call, plain and simple. So we can sugarcoat it any way we want to do it, but we have DPW crews. We have, you know, clearly there's a tax roll. We can identify who lives on private roads and how much they're paying. If we return the service, their roads wouldn't be falling apart. Apple Street is the extreme. We should be writing a letter to the state for them to pick up the tab as they control the landing on Apple Street. But we need to be fair, as Councilor Worthley has stated, to our constituents, the taxpayers, our customers, and we are not answering that. Thank you.
Mayor Verga.
I'm just going to be real quick, and this is a phrase I don't use often. With all due respect, I've been here a year. You guys, you just said, have been here 8 years. I'm sorry that we're now at the point that these roads are beyond temporary repairs. But I'm sorry if over the last 7 years, there was a policy change, because when I was the ward councilor, when I was an at-large councilor prior to 7 years ago, you're correct, Jamie. I'd make the call, they'd go patch a hole in the private road. 7 years of that policy being set aside put us in the position where we're in. And we are taking action. And you're hearing the results of it. It's, as I said, it's not a magic answer that came out of this report, but we aren't just ignoring it, and we're not just kicking it down the pothole filled road for another year. You know, we're trying to make something happen. So again, we are where we are. I've been here for a year and a week, and we have to deal with the hand that was dealt to us. So we're trying to find a way to get to that equitable point, but it's going to take several steps to get there. This is just the first few steps.
Thank you, Mayor. Any other comments from councilors so we can move on to the next order of business? Councilor Grow and Councilor Gross. Councilor Grow, you are muted.
As we've moved on from questions to speeches, I just don't know exactly what Councilor O'Hara heard, because it's very clear from everything that we've heard that it's not just simply a matter of giving the taxpayers what they want. We don't have the ability to use those funds the way that you would like them to be used. That's not something that any of us on this council are going to change. I mean, I think that there is certainly a lot to be said for the idea that it stinks that a lot of people have these private roads that are falling apart. We also charge betterments to attach to sewers. I mean, this is not an unusual thing that we're asking the community to do, is to accept the fact that there's costs that go into individual properties that aren't being covered by statutorily governed ways that we can spend money. I mean, if we could change it tomorrow, I'd be all for it. And if we can do something at the state level, terrific. But to sit there and say that the council, the mayor, the administration are cheating the taxpayers, I think is oversimplifies it to the point of being ridiculous. Thank you.
Councilor Gross?
Yeah, I just, it's more of a procedural question is, so we're just receiving this report. You said that we would possibly be writing a resolution to request a bigger share for public roads. And I guess the door is closed on private road. I'm not sure.
Well, we'd have to change the state law.
We have to change the state law even for potholes.
Because of the temporary requirement for
Can we make
the
temporary
potholes.
repairs on private roads?
Yes,
We can, okay.
we can, but we have a minimal amount of money to use. That's the
Well,
challenge there.
that's the public road that we have the 600 and whatever $1,000 it is. So that's all, those are some, that's all, that was it. We can make, is it my understanding that temporary repairs can be made on private roads though?
Right, but our recommendation that you'll see through the orders that are coming out of this are that the preference should be given to roads that are crossover streets or between two public roads.
No,
And we're trying to define that because we have a very limited amount of money to use.
Exactly.
And that's the challenge.
Yeah, no matter what, we're gonna have a limited amount of money, but there is a pathway.
Exactly.
There is a pathway for road improvement on private roads. That's all. I just want to make sure that people understood that. They're not going to be repaved.
That's right. It's just right. So Councilor O'Hara, and then we need to move on. Councilor O'Neill, I see your face. All right, hold on a second. We'll go to you first because you haven't spoken. Then we'll go to Councilor O'Hara. Go ahead, Councilor O'Neill.
Thank you. I understand this is a discussion about private roads getting repaired, etc. I would just like to ask that the council and the city, the administration and whoever take into consideration the public roads in the downtown area in Ward 2 and Ward 3, Church Street, Pine Street, Bent Street. We have a lot of disrepaired streets here as well, and I just don't want them to get overlooked. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Majota, did you just wanted to give a thumbs up? Thank you. So I think I'm going to just go to Councilor O'Hara, and then we're going to move on to the next order of business.
Certainly. I'd just like to point out, Councilor Grow, I don't appreciate you calling me ridiculous. I think that was out of line and out of order. And in respect to what Councilor Gilman said, we don't have the funds to patch potholes. To reiterate what Councilor Worthley stated, in fairness, so what's the answer? We raised the budgetary number for the DPW to patch potholes. We all have driven Brightside Ave, as has already been stated. It's a pass through. Those potholes that were on Brightside that the taxpayers of Brightside paid to repair didn't start overnight. And I have to reiterate that. We have a DPW, we have people that should be driving these streets that are identifying problems. When there's a problem, we repair it as a city. You go to the dentist when you have a toothache. You don't wait until the tooth is falling out of your head. You repair it. We as a city, I'll give you a perfect example. My house is at the corner of Oaks Ave and Lexington. Lexington's a public way, Oaks is private. There's a pothole right at the intersection of Oaks and Lexington that has been there for 2 or 3 years. It's never been repaired. Who's monitoring this?
Okay,
I can't stress
so
enough.
look-
We
I
need
would
to
like
be
to take
fair
an
the
opportunity to
citizens.
apologize. It
Thank
was
you,
not my
Councilor.
intention, it was not my intention, Councilor O'Hara, to call you ridiculous. I think the expectation that the city council and the administration are going to be in a position to radically change the way the state law is governed in terms of private road repair is perhaps not exactly the best effort that we can go in terms of moderating expectations. Okay, we're not going to see a dramatic change in here, but I did not mean to call you ridiculous personally. I apologize for that.
I appreciate that apology, Council Grow. So at this point, I think we're ready to transition to the next order of business. I do want to note that Suzanne Egan had to leave the call because she had to go to the licensing board, and Councilor Nolan wasn't feeling well, so he left possibly about 15 minutes ago. But to summarize this conversation, I am totally appreciate Mayor Verga giving us this opportunity to work as a group. We dug really deep. We are all passionate that there are a lot of things that we'd like to see done differently. We're going to lobby. We're going to be more aggressive. And we are not the only ones. We have 351 municipalities in Massachusetts, cities and towns. They're all struggling with the same issue. Suzanne Egan and I attended a conference call with the highest level person at MMA who oversees all of the city councilors. And we talked about this and what other municipalities are doing. Everyone is in the same boat. And I'm looking forward to seeing maybe more of you at the presentation at MMA on the 20th at 3:30, because Mike is going to be sitting on a panel with a lot of other high-level people. And this is the beginning of really good lobbying. So we're passionate, we're prepared. We are probably the most educated group of city councilors and volunteers in the state right now, and I'm proud of that. So thank you, Bill Helmuth, for your leadership, for Jock Bernhoff, for Doug Fifield, Karen Bell, Suzanne Egan, and Mayor Verga for and Sean Nolan as an alternate for a job well done. So thank you so much, and let's get ready for the next order of business, Madam Clerk.
The next order of business is the consent agenda.
Okay, councilors, would anyone like to pull any matter off the consent agenda? I would like to remove applications, petitions, 2RZ 2023-001 in accordance with GZO section 1.11.2B, application by DLM Properties LLC, Condon Road, number 24, map 197, lot 13, to amend GZO section 2.3.5 by adding a transfer station use line and amend section 4 by adding transfer station definition. Would anyone else like to remove any matter on the consent agenda? Seeing none, I'd like to approve the consent agenda as amended right now. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved. Second.
I think I heard Councilor Memard and seconded by Councilor Worthley. So let's do a roll call vote on that. Councilor Nolan is absent. Councilor O'Hara.
Yes.
Councilor O'Neill.
Yes.
Councilor Worthley.
Yes.
Councilor Gilman. Yes. Councilor Gross.
Yes.
Councilor Grow.
Yes.
Councilor Majota.
Yes.
Councilor Memard.
Yes.
The consent agenda minus the one matter is approved, 8 in favor, 1 absent. And now let's go back to what I asked to remove. And I'd just like to note that, hold on a sec. We received an email from Joel Baza at 4:04 today. It was to Joanne Sinos, copied me and Suzanne Egan. Joanne, on behalf of DLM Properties LLC, I'm hereby requesting that its petition to amend the Gloucester zoning ordinance to add a transfer station definition in accompanying use line be withdrawn without prejudice. Joel Favazza. So at this point, I'd like us to, I recommend that we accept the motion to withdraw without prejudice on this matter. And
So
I
moved.
so I moved it. Second,
Second.
Councilor Memard. Is there a discussion, councilors? Seeing none, roll call vote. Councilor Nolan is absent. Councilor O'Hara,
Yes.
Councilor O'Neill,
Yes.
Councilor Worthley,
Yes.
Councilor Gilman, yes. Councilor Gross,
Yes.
Councilor Grow,
Yep.
Councilor Majota,
Yes.
Councilor Memard.
Yes.
The yeses have it. 8 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you. Next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is the Budget and Finance Standing Committee report of January 5th.
Great. I'd like to turn the meeting over to Councilor Memard. And if you would present the Budget and Finance unanimous consent agenda by reviewing what the 10 matters are, and I'll give you control of the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just in the interest of time tonight, rather than going through each of these in full detail, we propose to summarize them. And then if anybody wants to pull one off for further discussion, they certainly can, but otherwise to approve them as a consent agenda. Let's see, we have 10 items from Budget and Finance. Number 1, a memorandum from the Archives Committee requesting the acceptance of donations from the Daughters of the American Revolution in the amount of $500. Number 2, a memorandum from our DPW director and a supplemental budgetary request, 2023 SA6 in the amount of $25,000 for the funding of a second of 2 payments for a new beach rake machine. Number 3 is a memorandum from the director of DPW requesting acceptance of a donation from Carroll Steel Insurance in the amount of $500 towards preservation and maintenance of the Langsford Street Cemetery. Number 4, special budgetary transfer 2023 SBT 9 from the mayor in the amount of $240 for the purpose of reimbursement of custodial overtime for a December 3rd Daughters of the American Revolution award ceremony. Number 5 is a memo from the CFO requesting approval of a 5-year lease for 3 school buses for a total of $268,630. A point of interest, we discussed whether these should be electric yet, and that we lack the infrastructure, and there's so much change in the market that these are not yet, although long-term recommended to switch to electric vehicles. These at this point for this current term for these leases are standard diesel vehicles. Number 6 was a memorandum from the Community Development Director requesting acceptance of a Mass Cultural Council grant in the amount of $13,600, supporting our local cultural projects in the city. Number 7, a memorandum from the Police Chief requesting acceptance of fiscal year 2023 Municipal Road Safety Grant in the amount of $35,000, which funds police details. Memorandum from the Information Systems Director, Ryan Knowles, requesting our acceptance of a Community Compact IT grant in the amount of $56,266 for the purpose of establishing a disaster recovery site at the upcoming East Veterans School for a mission critical application for information systems for both city and schools. Number 9 is a memorandum from the CFO and a supplemental appropriation budgetary request 2023 SA7 in the amount of $60,000 for the purchase of new Glock firearms, net of trade-in for the police department. And the final one, number 10, is a memorandum from the CFO requesting acceptance of a already received Division of Capital Asset Management maintenance grant in the amount of $1,500,000 for the purpose of completing historic restoration projects that include restoration to the Gloucester City Hall. And those are the 10 items before you. And would anybody like to pull any of those off, or can we accept them as whole?
Councilors, anyone want to remove one of these from the unanimous consent agenda? Seeing none, is there a motion to approve the unanimous consent agenda?
I'll move.
Second,
I think I heard Councilor Gross and seconded by Councilor O'Neill. Roll call vote. Councilor Nolan is absent. Councilor O'Hara.
yes.
Councilor O'Neill.
Yes.
Councilor Worthley. Councilor Worthley.
Yes, I'm sorry, I was muted.
Councilor Gilman, yes. Councilor Gross.
Yes.
Councilor Grow.
Yes.
Councilor Marjota.
Yes.
Councilor Memard.
Yes, thank you.
Yeses have it, 8 in favor, 1 absent. Thank you very much, Councilor Memard. Next order of business, Madam Clerk. Joanne, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Just like to mention there was
Wait,
no.
Councilor Gross has his hand raised. Go ahead. Hold on a sec.
Before we go, I know we're going to skip past planning and development because we didn't have a meeting, but I did want to take the opportunity to tell people we are going to have a presentation on the velocity zone, velocity overlay zone for zoning changes that are coming up before the city council at the next P&D meeting. If people are interested in that, it's about development in the AE and velocity zones for properties, and people who live in those areas may want to know about it and attend this meeting to hear what is coming down the pike.
Okay, thank you. Madam Clerk, next order of business.
Oh, I just wanted to mention that there was no meeting on January 2nd because of the holiday for the ordinance administration meeting. And Council Grow already mentioned about no meeting on January 4th. So the next item is the scheduled public hearings, public hearing 2022-034, loan order 22-009, loan authorization in the amount of $19 million for the Gloucester Police Station and Courthouse facility renovation.
I'd like to open the public hearing and continue it to January 24th, 2023.
Second.
I don't know if we have, we don't have to second that.
No,
I think we're good. Thank you, Scott. So I think we're all set. And so next order of business, Madam Clerk.
Is public hearing 2023-001, an amendment to loan order 2021-004, loan authorization request in the amount of $600,000 for the Harbor Master Patrol boat.
I'd like to open the public hearing and ask for a for the applicant. TJ Shimataro is here. So TJ, you have the floor. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So I'd like to start off with a loan order. It sounds a little misleading, $600,000 for the Harbor Master Patrol boat. I understand this is a technicality on how we increase the loan order for to purchase a second boat. But I'd like to just try to do this as efficiently as possible, how we got here, and why we need the new boat. So originally, before you all and this council approved a $410,000 loan order for a patrol boat for the Harbor Master's office. The actual cost of that boat in the purchase order as it sits is $381,254. I applied after the fact for the loan order for a grant through the Department of Homeland Security, Port Security grant, and we received $285,941, thus bringing the cost of the patrol boat out of the Waterways Enterprise Fund to just $95,313 is what we were going to use after we pay back the $381,254 from the original price of the patrol boat. So over the last few years, we have discussed the possibility of owning a second launch for the city. We have become incredibly busy with tourism in the harbor, special events, marine permitted events. Launch times have gotten to exceed almost an hour sometimes on the weekends. We have suffered some casualties. We had a pretty big casualty last summer with a patrol, or where the launch boat actually went down for a couple of weeks. I'm sure you are all aware. We performed kind of a mini miracle in the middle of summer, and we're able to obtain a new motor and repower the launch and get it back up in operation. But that really was the biggest eye opener. After the last couple of years, we've been discussing trying to get a second launch. Are so busy, not to mention having a backup boat when one goes down, as we well learned this past summer. So with us being able to, get the port security grant, we really thought that this was a great time to try to purchase a second launch boat, since we freed up all that capital that we originally thought we were going to burden in debt through the Waterways Enterprise Fund through a loan order. Well, having money and trying to buy a launch, especially in this current, economic state, if you will, with delays and parts, supply chain issues, builders are 2 to 3 years out. For most manufacturers, Crosby, Atlantic Boat Works, stuff, Eastern Boats, like they have at the Annisquam Yacht Club that you might be familiar with. Every one of these builders is 18 to 30 months on a build. Fortunately, we have a relationship with Atlantic Boat Work. The current city launch is an Atlantic Boat Work Duffy, 26 foot. It's the exact make and model, but not year, but very similar. The one we're trying to purchase now. We actually, one's misfortune. Fort Myers Yacht Club originally had this boat under contract and suffered a devastating hurricane, and they don't have a need for this launch boat anymore. So I was contacted by Atlantic Boat Works. They knew we were looking for a launch. I had actually been in contact with them originally when the launch broke down, seeing if they had a motor. They were willing to accommodate us and really go out of their way to provide us with a motor. But unfortunately, the motor mounts and some other mechanicals would have needed to be changed, which would have brought the launch down for the entire summer. So we ended up going a different route. So we have a pretty good relationship with these builders. This kind of fell in our lap, and with the perfect timing of us having received this port security grant that's going to cover 75% of the patrol boat and freeing up this extra money. Unfortunately, the loan order has to be extended because we have to. I mean, John can explain that, the treasurer, more than I can, but it's not encompassed in the amount. Even though we're not going to use it, we have to extend it. We're not spending $600,000. In fact, we're getting the Harbor Master patrol boat, which is already in production, and the launch for a total of $270,213. That's still $139,787 less than we thought we were originally going to spend for one boat. So we're getting two boats, and we're still $139,787 ahead of the game from the original loan order and the anticipated amount we all thought we were going to have to spend for the one boat. So hopefully, I see John smiling because I got the numbers in front of me here. I hope I'm doing you proud. So that's kind of, and he can explain the technicality and why the loan order has to change. But it's not $600,000 for a Harbor Master patrol boat at all. It's just the technicalities of the verbiage. We are in desperate need of this. It's been a long time coming. This is a perfect opportunity. All the stars have aligned for us, as far as I'm concerned, as far as being able to get a boat, being able to fund a boat, the need for the boat. We're coming into the Gloucester 400th. It's going to be the busiest waterfront year I think the city might possibly has ever had as far as tourism. We're adding to tourism. We're not taking up parking. We're not driving on roads, causing more potholes. We're bringing people in by water to our downtown, right in the artery at Harbor Loop. So I hope that you guys all support this. I think this is a great time for us to do this. We're still ahead of the game as far as funding goes. We're getting two long-term assets that'll last the city 20 plus years at least. This boat is it's an Atlantic Boat Work. It's a Duffy. It's a Maine built boat. They build about 15-ish of them a year. It's kind of a bulletproof hull and design. And as you saw this past summer, every 5 years for $20,000, you put a new motor in it, and you got another five to 10 years out of it. And this will increase. This will not only increase our ability for patrons and wait time. It's also a twofold where it's going to increase our ability to add more moorings in Southeast Harbor. There's a wait list. Everyone wants a mooring. We can't consciously add more moorings out there because the primary source of transportation to those moorings is the harbor launch, and we're already at capacity. So we'll be able to expand our mooring areas, give a better service to our customers and to the public. So we're knocking out, a couple things with one stone. And I think that's pretty much got it covered. We will run 2 launches at peak times. We're not going to run 2 launches all the time. We'll run them on Saturday, Sunday, after Fiesta until probably Labor Day weekend. And then this is also going to give us the ability, if we have a casualty, to continue the service. And we're going to be able to maintain each launch more appropriately, because it's not going to get run from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. for 120 days straight. We're going to be able to take it down, do more maintenance. Both boats are identical hull designs. So our boat stands, trailers, some parts that we already have on hand are interchangeable, than buying a different brand launch. So a lot of stars lined up for us on this. I hope that answered a lot of questions that we may get, but after the public hearing, I'm sure if you guys have additional questions, please ask them. I know there's a variety of Waterways Board members on here, and I think I've seen a couple employees from the Harbor Master's office that I think are going to speak on behalf of this for public hearing. It was voted on unanimously by the Waterways Board. It brought to DNF unanimous vote, and now it's on to you folks. So thank you very much. I hope you support it.
Thank you, TJ. Appreciate it. Who else would like to speak in favor? John Dunn, do you want to continue with this?
Yeah. So again, just to kind of say, fill in on what TJ said. We need an appropriation to expend the total amount. And we were very lucky in terms of his work to bring in a big grant. So, in the end, we're going to end up with 2 boats for less than we expected to expend for just the 1 boat. So we're in good shape, and it's going to, enable the city to do what it needs to do. And as TJ mentioned, particularly coming up with the 400th, it's going to be very important to have that out there.
Great, thank you. I see Steve LeBlanc's hand is up, and as the chair of the Waterways Board, could you bring him in to be the first person to speak?
Okay, I brought in Michael only because he had his hand up first.
Okay, we should be diplomatic. So Michael, would you introduce yourself and your address? And you have up to 3 minutes to speak in favor of this initiative.
Sure, thank you. My name's Michael Birchenoff. I live at the Residence at Seaport at 196 Main Street. Thanks for allowing me to speak. I've been a launch operator for 5 years for the Gloucester launch, and I'm also a boat owner, and I have a mooring out in Southeast Harbor. So I'm both a launch operator and a passenger. Here's kind of what I want to share. I remember when I first started, everybody said, "Oh my God, Gloucester's a hidden gem," and well, it's no longer a hidden gem. Everybody knows about us, and recreational boating and transient visitors has exploded. I'm an eyewitness to it. Like I say, I run this launch, several days a week. One thing I can tell you, I also ran a launch at Eastern Point Yacht Club, and I also ran a launch out in Salem at Hawthorne Cove Marina, and what's now called Safe Harbor. And each of those facilities have 2 launches, and I never really paid much attention to, why it was so important to have 2 launches. But boy, what a wake-up call I had here in Gloucester, because I was the launch operator several times when it broke down. And one thing I can tell you is when it breaks down, you're out of business. people are stranded on their boats and you're trying to figure out how to get them back in and then communicate as to how they're not going to be able to get to their boats. The difference between the other places that I worked at and here was these other facilities, every mooring ride you gave, everything was line of sight. You could see the boat that you were going to go pick up and bring them back to their destination or their home port. And with Gloucester, we cover 4.5 nautical miles. And here's how it works. You leave Cripple Cove to Solomon Jacobs, and hopefully you all know these landmarks. And then you go to St. Peter's, and then I'd have to go to Stagehead, and then I'd have to go to Southeast, and then service 10 Pound Island, and then back to Solomon Jacobs. That is 4.5 nautical miles. At a cruising speed of 6 nautical miles, it takes 45 minutes to make that run without even picking anybody up. That's as a bird would fly. So now add all these stops and pickups, and it takes 2 to 3 minutes to do that safely, right? With winds and current and making sure everybody's safe. So anyhow, that's the difference between Gloucester Harbor and these other places. And all I can tell you is with the volume and the amount of people that are here and the folks that want to go to breakfast, lunch, and dinner and asking me, I feel like an extension of Discover Gloucester because they're asking me where to go, and I'm telling them, and I'm so excited.